Fritz Wettstein is currently overseeing the native plant arboretum at Maclay, but he has a very, very long history with this chapter, probably one of the original members, and is now retired, but semi-working as a landscape architect, but had a career working in conservation biology and in beaches and doing various things, teaching. Fritz is a great resource and very knowledgeable about growing natives and planting natives and what to do. And some of you have been to his house and on his yard tour and see that we all can learn a lot from him. And welcome, Fritz.
Well, thank you, Nia. So I can turn this off, I suppose?
Yeah.
Until we talk. Am I miking okay? You can hear it? All right, very good. Oh, well, this is fun. Yes, the topic is the native plant arboretum, but really the target of this talk is y'all, because you are the native plant arboretum at Maclay. You've made it happen in more ways than you'll recognize. And then I can, and we'll get to y'all in a little bit, but we're just going to, we can move on. We've subtitled this the past, present, and future of the Arboretum. We'll give you a little story about where it came from, how we're doing now, and maybe what some plans are for the future. So it's interesting. So we're going to start at the beginning and then move on into the future. But first, we're going to ground ourselves with where the Arboretum is located. Oh, this is not moving. Houston, we have a problem. How about this? Oh, I got that. No. Okay, so I advanced this one for my notes. Yes. This works. This will work. Again, it's self-explanatory. But let's think about what we're planting now and what it's going to be in 2085. That will be the 100th anniversary of this Arboretum at Maclay. So we're going to think about our location. We'll follow through the 5 W's and how, kind of who, what, where, when, and why. So where are we located? We're part of Alfred B. Maclay State Park. We're in this little area that's off to the right of the brick path as you go in the entrance to the formal gardens. It's an area that was not being used by the state park as they managed the Killarn Gardens. So it was an old stock area that was not being used, and we got a couple acres of it. Another way to look at our location is at our geographic area and the ecosystem in which we're located. This is an arbitrary 100-mile radius, but just to show our affinity for the systems of the Gulf Coastal Plain, from the Florida Peninsula up into the sandhills of Georgia, South Georgia, and west. We try to capture the Apalachicola Basin. We're so fortunate, Dave and Jeannie at Sarracenia have the botanical garden for native plants at the depot in Sopchoppy to help cover the plants of the Wacalacaris Plain and those coastal areas. As you go west, there's a native plant garden in Bluntstown, and that they're community gardens. And Bob Farley also developed a native plant garden at Port St. Joe. So we have some overlap, but we're here in the Red Hills and kind of focused on that. But we recognize the context. We are part of Florida and part of the southeastern United States. If you follow our latitude across the globe, you run into the Himalayas and that belt in which I think it was Kelly Coles described a hotspot of rhododendron speciation, and Southeast Asia having a similar climate, humid, subtemperate. We share some of the floristic characteristics of that, of parts of Africa and Australia, and obviously South America. These are sources of ornamental and horticultural plants for us, as well as our invasives. So it's important for us, we think local or enact local, but we're also thinking global, because those are places of interest and effect on us. So what is the Arboretum? Britannica defines an arboretum as a place where trees, shrubs, and sometimes herbaceous plants are cultivated for scientific and educational purposes. An arboretum may be a collection in its own right or part of a botanical garden. It could just be a collection of trees within a greater botanical garden. The name came to us on the sign from the Florida Park Service as the native plant arboretum. But the place means many things to many people. You talk to the park ranger or the cashier, how she looks at it as part of the gardens, botanists looking at it. Mother Nature has its own perspective, because it all depends on where you stand. But the good thing is that even with all these definitions, you can see all these things in it and more. That really it's that kind of synergy. The sum is larger. The whole is larger than the sum of its parts. And it's really a community of plants and people that are working together in a place of natural beauty, scientific integrity, and long-term continuity. We're in its 40th year, and I think that's something to stand on. The Arboretum is a child of the times, developed in the 1980s. The result of a natural marriage between the Lean and Green Florida Park Service. David worked for the Park Service as well. Maybe some of y'all kind of remember how they prided themselves on being resourceful. But a marriage between the Park Service and then this group of up-and-comers with the native plant folks. Dan gave us some of the story of the Upsy Daisy Plant Uplift Society that kind of grew out of the frustration with us losing our natural areas, losing our native plants. Let's go save them. That shone a spotlight on the issue where at the time in the 70s and early 80s, you couldn't go to a Home Depot and find Walter's viburnum or Kunti or Yopon. Many of these native plants weren't available in the nursery trade, the native azaleas and all. So there's interest in the plants, interest in conservation of natural communities that coalesced with the energy of the native plant folks marrying with the Florida Park Service. Why is it at Maclay? To me, it aligns perfectly. Alfred B. Maclay developed a showpiece camellia azalea gardens on the Killarn plantation that he came into the ownership of in the early 1900s. But he was attracted to the area's scenic beauty, the beauty of Lake Hall, of the Spanish moss festooned live oaks, of the magnolias, of the flowering dogwoods, and then thought he would improve on that with the camellia azalea garden. But his eye, he had the eye for scenic beauty, into which they had this underused area within an area they called the woodlands, that the Magnolia chapter folks approached the state park with this idea of developing. And from that marriage in 1984 was a plan to develop it. And in 1985, it got started. The Florida Park Service with their shop that had the engraving tool and the right paint and all, recognized this area with the park sign. So the pictures from the early 1980s, and you see the red buckeye in their leafless state, a magnolia, and the needle palm in there. So I've been talking around it. Here's the storyline. We can go back to the 1900s, and then before the 1900s, we need to really understand the story of the first peoples that visited this area. Then through the plantation era, its inception as a state garden. We talked about the plant digs and the founding of the Native Plant Society in '81. They met up here in 1983 with Wilson Baker and some of our other members in attendance. Melanie Darst said, we've got all these beautiful magnolia species in the area. Why don't we be the Magnolia chapter? And that started. They hit the ground running. They started education programs in the local schools, newsletter, and came up with this idea for the project of the Arboretum at Maclay, and planted it initially in '85. I kind of started getting involved in 89, 90. Remember us planting the tulip poplar out there and others. Kept improving on the gardens through the 90s, and then more of Dan's azaleas. Ann Redmond spearheaded a garden restoration in 2004 with planting of more trees. Beech trees, some more magnolias, chalk maples, some of the different oaks that have all done very well. Into the 10s, Bob Farley worked on a wildflower grant, and then the area was shepherded by Ann Johnson. After that, up till now, when we're working on this expansion of the Arboretum area. So with all these gardens, there's change over time. Some of these are dramatic changes and some not quite so. On the left-hand side of the screen, the large water oak, mature, senescent, canopy, crown declining, that finally fell apart and was removed. This opened up a sunny spot for a great pollinator garden. Other plants, including needle palm, Florida yew, what I call the Salter Shumard oak, and then other trees and shrubs, and even some ground cover like the Amsonia tabermontania, one of the blue stars, have persisted over these 40 years incredibly well. But our time-space continuum is not linear. We have circularity. We have from Ecclesiastes to everything, there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. And here we've had the time to plant, the time to reap, the time to sow, and we've seen the evolution through the seasons, blooming times of the different perennials and flowering trees, and through our people who have contributed incredible energies and talents to this garden area. As I mentioned in Dan Miller's talk last month, he described the importance of the Upsy Daisy Plant Uplift Society. And there's their patch. We had a picture of it earlier, this patch on Chuck Salter. There were really 4 members of that society, 3 of them with the Tallahassee Democrat, and then Chuck. And you know, he was integral as a nurseryman in trying to fill that gap of the lack of native plants for landscapes and parking lots. He pushed the Shumard oak as a desirable landscape tree that really wasn't used and is kind of particular to this area and slope forest. So it was folks like him, the other members of the early board of the Magnolia chapter of the Native Plant Society, a open and welcome Florida Park Service management, and then the native nurseries, the operations of Tallahassee Native Nurseries, of Tallahassee, I'm sorry, Trillium Gardens that Dan ran. There's a Bull Bay Creek Farms. Jan Ray and Collier Clark ran in the 80s and early 90s. Melanie Darst was a propagator for that. We got plants from John's Nursery in Eustis and Mr. Buchanan in Central Florida Land and Timber. And just this partnership consortium of groups being here in the capital area. We had this incredible intellectual talent as well, and people focused on the environment and its protection and its resources in the Florida Natural Areas Inventory. And as I said, the Park Service, the Florida Division of Forestry, Forest Service, and the National Forest We've also developed partnerships with the Friends of Maclay Gardens, who have been generous with their time and a donation of $3,000 this January for plants in the Arboretum and expanded areas. But again, it really comes down to y'all. That y'all were the ones that have made this happen, and we need to begin with that recognition. Your membership and your raffles, they all go to a line item. Well, oh, yeah, they help go to a line item in the chapter budget for the Maclay Arboretum, and we're very thankful for that. And then it's not just that, financial aspect. It's your special interest over years as garden coordinators, plant experts, the weeders, the planters, the sawyers, the waterers, tour guides, planners, volunteer managers, and visitors. All you that have shed blood, sweat and tears, sometimes literally from the briars or the hazards of the ticks that we have there. We just are so appreciative. Got to give a special shout out to then our partners I mentioned down south in Wakulla, and the ones out west, and the larger Florida Native Plant Society. But then also to y'all and the generous souls that have devoted your time. For instance, Nia and her leadership and support. And she's not just a great president for this chapter, but she's a solid volunteer. And she's a solid volunteer that puts in her time and energy and brings Shane, her husband, and her daughters to these events. That's very good. I haven't seen Rayanne here, but I give her a shout out for roping me back into this and leading our mules. She's a real workhorse out there, and I get a little grin from Scott on that. I think that's of a agreement there. I'm sorry. Want to include Dr. Ann Johnson. I look to her for our scientific integrity. She's been maintaining our species list and making sure we have it right. And when a plant comes in, she's the first one to say, is that really native or endemic, or, does that belong here? That is, in addition to putting together brochures and other things, she's been wild. One thing I don't know if you see on this slide is this collage was started in 2010. I did a presentation on the history of Maclay Gardens then. And so then I updated it with some of our other participants. But you got a lot of the old guard and some of the new guard in there. We've got our line of Maclay garden coordinators, Bob Farley, James Cooper, and Redmond. We'll mention Jan Blue again, that have been incredible in kind of making all this work. And then Dan Miller, the Azalea Man. Then finally, Kasia Wagner, before her, Beth Widener. Well, there's probably someone between there, but I just remember working with Beth, who've been so supportive with their staff and providing the water and irrigation cleaning the paths, you know, in this area as well. So. So our partnerships is that, you know, we've got our role and the parks has theirs. And it's worked out well. And then lately we've been partnering more closely with the Friends of Maclay group, the citizen support organization for Maclay Gardens State Park. So it works. And on the left there is a picture from the 90s of Virginia working what we call the Mariana Caverns portion of the garden, where we've got phlox and Adamasco lilies and pacra and other things you find there. And then on the right is, okay. I think no, okay. On the background here is a map you see at the entrance to the gardens at the visitor center. And this area called the woodland area is what I've been referring to as the woodland in which the Arboretum is located. This device has a great history and it kind of comes full circle. We've had kind of concerns about how to educate the public, a prime mission of ours, as this is a demonstration garden. So it's demonstrating, and how do we interpret that? And so, you know, signs are one way to do it. However, the Maclay folks were very careful initially as it became a state park to say we want it as it was. This is a historical park. This is for enjoyment, for its scenic beauty. And, you know, the park management was very hesitant with the signs and the other things and labeling stuff. Cash had, I believe, dug this out of a barn or a back storage area, and it was Mr. Maclay's, right? And Mr. Maclay had developed this label maker, or had purchased this label maker to keep track of the varieties of his camellias. So he was interested in the botanical information in his garden. So we're going to follow that, and we're going to be tagging and using this thing. You put in these pieces of kind of like a tin strip, and then punch in letters kind of representing that genus and species that we can keep better tabs on our plants. Okay. So we have fun out there. Yes, it's hard work. There's just a little bit of enjoyment you get out of killing a skunk vine, but a lot of it, you know, is not really fun. But we do have fun. We have garden parties. We have outreach events. We get involved with the scarecrows in the gardens in October. We've had great support from the FSU Environmental Service Program, and they're a lot of fun. But, you know, we keep our focus on conservation and education, and spearheaded putting together a series of brochures for what's blooming seasonally. with some of y'all's great photographs in there. This is not only available at the garden, but it's available online at our Maclay Gardens page on the website. We have to do more in spreading the plant gospel at the Arboretum and online. We can't keep our candle under the bushel basket for too long. So that's history of what we got and how we got here. So I want to share with you some of my personal observations, some of my lessons learned. I'm speaking, now kind of for myself as the kind of newly anointed garden coordinator for the Arboretum. But I've got some history with the place, and I hope this is helpful. Recognizing learning is a dangerous thing, and we are all have danger as our middle name, right? So we'll start with the concept of the natural garden model that was included in the original landscape design from the 1980s. And it's the idea that plants that occur naturally together have a similar aesthetic, and if they can be grown in a garden, can impart a design sense representing the theme of that place. Yes, it was called an arboretum, but it's really been designed as a naturalistic landscape garden intended to serve as a demonstration for the native plants that we can grow in our gardens and landscapes, representing what folks might see when they go to Torreya or Mariana Caverns or some of our other natural areas. And they come back, they'll go to Maclay. Oh, I did see that type of yew-like plant on our hike around Maclay, and to pull those together and say, oh, I didn't know that you could go to native nurseries and buy that plant and put it in your yard, and the Florida yew is an all-star, and I'll talk about the all-stars later. That concept worked for some of the areas, but some of the ideas fell flat. We thought about doing a cedar glade because of the importance of conservation of those little pockets out in Gadsden County, and the Gadsden glades also in Jackson County. There's try to bog, try to coastal area. We're going to let Sarracenia grow the coastal plants. They could have much better success than we can. So after 40 years, I think we've learned a few things. One of the things is that we're kind of battling the weed forest, the urban weed forest, and they've done a great job at the Timberlane ravines preserve in removing a lot of the invasive plants, because you go into these pockets of natural areas within Tallahassee and Leon and the Red Hills, and they're overrun with camphor, sweet gum, understory of Nandina, Ardesia, Liriope, and all as their ground covers. And we're battling that. And we've had success in doing that. I think some of the success we can see in the fact that we almost have a regenerative system at this point. Along with the magnolias, and the mockernut hickory, and redbud trees that were existing on the site and are continue to be existing. We've added a lot to it. The birds have added, of course, to it. But from what we've brought in, many seem to be regenerative. Amazing production of silverbell seedlings, Shumard oak seedlings. Probably don't need to mention the cabbage palm, they grow everywhere. But the Florida soapberry, it actually is very specific to some Indian middens and spoil islands in the Apalachicola, but is a good contribution to this kind of hammock forest that we have. So it's also a good example of, I think Dr. Kluhl gave this, of the bottomland trees moving uphill with disturbance, having a greater propagative capacity and all. Another thing I've learned is, and I've just learned to like these plants and respect them as really being suited to this site. The Florida maple, if you remember from the last slide, is regenerating. The pipe stem is 40 years old and still going strong, as well as a couple specimens of the small flowered pawpaw. We've got our plant list on our website, and you can see more about them there. But I like plants that mind their manners and kind of give you a long run. We can't seem to have enough of the Brachylia right now. I've also learned how important the wildlife gardeners are to our place. And it kind of makes us wonder if the ash magnolia really isn't a good fit for Maclay. We've had to cage all our specimens and have lost one of the original plantings from the deer rub. They'll also go for other species in the gardens. So death is inevitable, just like and we can learn from it, though, that either we're going to be replanting or we're going to pick other species. We killed red cedar. I think we killed them by topping them at the wrong time of year. I don't think it was just shading of the big Shumard oak that took them out. But on the right side is a plant list from the early 90s, and then a map from, I think, the around 2004, representing some of the beds within the Arboretum. And all the red you see are plants that didn't make it. I mentioned the red cedar that passed away. All the flowering dogwoods are gone. The red buds, we lose one here, we get another one there. Silverbell, kind of similar. But so even if we have 25% mortality kind of in the list, over time replanting, we've kept our numbers up to around 150 species. And then we'll be adding to that. So that, we talked about the all-stars. So the result over time is that we've got this wild hammock that can get pretty busy. And to the eye, aesthetically, there's nothing to focus on. We can walk around looking at our feet, looking at ground covers and where we're going to step next and which weed we're going to pull out. And then we lose the canopy. we look in the canopy and we've got everybody competing, flowers of these beautiful trees way up high. And it's kind of hard to take in, hard to appreciate for the average person. So we're spent a lot of our blood, sweat, and tears trying to control this chaos and keep the skunk weed down, remove biomass, open up canopy, and kind of keep this boat afloat. We lead by example and by doing, and the garden is whoever's working on it. So now that I'm working on it, I'm thinking about trees and shrubs. Bob has a background with roadside wildflowers and got the Florida Wildlife Foundation grant. And we had a great planting. Jan Blue is a great example of focus on what's important. She adopted an area by the entrance to the garden, the pollinator garden, and she made it work. So when you walk in, even this time of year, it's, some standing stems, but it's always of interest and flowering interest throughout the season. Mentioned Ann Johnson giving us scientific integrity, people like Karen Berkeley focusing on the invasive removal. We've got the cleanest spot in Maclay Gardens. Is that right? Maybe not the walled garden, but we've got a clean 2 acres because of all that great work. We've got more and more of our volunteers, such as Dan's amazing azalea collection, Dr. James Cooper, the penultimate volunteer, dedicated, committed, hardworking, just amazing, resulting in this synergy of the Arboretum, not descending into chaos, always moving forward. It's been proud to participate in. But we have our limitations, and we know there's only so many of us and so many hours. So, what can we do? We're going to need to limit our areas requiring hand weeding, and we're going to maximize the assistance of mechanical and chemical technologies. Dan introduced me to the lawnmower as a maintenance tool for wildflowers. And we see that at the High Line in New York City, where they've populated this old railroad bed, suspended railroad bed with perennials and wildflowers, that they whack it 3 times before they really get into the meat of summer, as things come up, to keep them in check, to keep them in control, to kind of beat some of that biomass back. I also like what the park does and what Alfred Maclay envisioned with dense planting of shrubs and kind of reducing the light available to plants like Bidens. But really it starts with selecting the plants. And in this image, the right plants were selected. That yew is doing great, and in partnership with the magnolias around, the mockernut hickory, and the spigelia, again planted by Bob, are doing great things. So here, the idea would be to edit out the cabbage palm. Yeah, it's native, but we really don't need it. It's busying our place up. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, we'll go over here, get that. So those are the lessons learned, and now the lessons applied. We're looking at the future Arboretum. We're looking at 2085, and what do we have? We have this initial area. Does this have a light thing? Yep. So, and I can't see it because there we go. So this is the Mariana Caverns. This is the Torreya woods and the woodlands area. We've given the green light to expand our area of maintenance downhill towards the lake. This opens an opportunity for restoration, and then planting species more in the suitable site, more the right plant, right place, as we go down this topographic gradient to the coast. So over the next couple of years, I hope we can engage y'all through surveys or follow-up meetings to get your ideas of what this future can be. Develop those guiding principles. I've been giving you my ideas, but I'm not the czar, the dictator. We need an organization plan to see what's realistic with our resources, staff and volunteers and funding. And then a master plan, and then look forward to the update of the Parks Unit Management Plan to see that we're appropriately cited within it. And then, but in the meantime, we've got a lot of work that we can do. So we're looking at this, calling it Sparkleberry Hill, that island I showed you down from the current Arboretum area, where we've cleaned up this beautiful stand of Vaccinium arboreum that kind of gives you that showpiece but is visible because it's not crowded with everything. So I hope that we can create spaces between the trees and, around the shrubs, so that we can offer views, allow the specimens to stand out, and simplify the ground plane. The ground cover here are daffodils and snowbells and Ophiopogon, or mondo grass. So we have a Christmas wish list for building our plant collection. And Donna and Jody, thanks to Carolyn, have bequeathed us a new Miccosukee gooseberry, the Ribes echinellum, that I hope we have some better luck finding a suitable site for it now. So this is the kind of wish list. We can now take the gooseberry off of there, but for the pine oak hickory island, to have some of these kind of uncommon, uncommon in the nursery trade, but really characteristic pine oak hickory species, I think would be great. So what do? We might need to be growing these from seed or cuttings. And some of y'all have that ability. And then we can maybe also transplant some from some of the lands that are available from members or through the Florida Forest Service. Some of these can be available there. So we got the pine oak hickory, and then what I'm considering rare or uncommon species, some of the lesser known salix, the Florida willow, the gray willow, things like that. We don't have any bay trees. I don't think we ever had bay trees in there. So just food for thought for maybe how you can help out. Then you can also participate and join us. We've got our third Thursday work days. We're having our garden party on the 22nd. You're invited for tours, and we can do some plant ID and enjoy the Arboretum then. We'll have our new brochure of the plants coming out. Another planting for Arbor Day. We'll have it cleaned up for the tour of gardens that the Friends of Maclay host as a fundraising event for them, that folks might drop by and visit us. And then this summer, we kind of take some time off and, start planning, remembering that planning is the tyranny of present generations imposed on future generations. So y'all young people need to get involved, or as old people will be saying, you want to have a bog up there on top of the hill, and you're going to go, this doesn't work. So I hope you get it. I hope you got something out of this and got some. I'm still in Hawaii, so I'm sorry I was a little discombobulated there. But mahalo, and I appreciate your all's time and attention. But if you want to ask, if you want to know who's up there, it was a lot of fun putting that collage together. Or if you have any questions, I think we have one question. Yes. Very difficultly. So Coop was best. He had a spreadsheet, and he, because he was out there all the time, he knew who was going out, and he would send out an email to say, give me your hours. And he was pretty good at that. I'm not so good. And I don't think Ann was so good. But I'm hopeful that the Park Service will develop like an online portal where we just go in, like, boom, boom, and we're there. One thing we really need to do is get more of our consistent volunteers kind of signed up as state park volunteers. I think that would help some of that. I know some of us aren't interested in that, but I think that would help some. Yes. Mhm. So we report to both what we have. But it's average like 130 hours a year that people have reported to us based on cajoling them. We know we're putting a lot more time in than that. So that's a good question. What about community engagement? So the idea is to get information from y'all. Do y'all do things like doodle polls or any online polls? If we sent you emails, like rate these things in terms of preference? Can we do that kind of stuff? So I thought we'd start with that. Find out what's important to y'all, what your values are, and then with those we can kind of develop the guiding principles types of things. Yes, Marilena. Mhm. Right. So it's a great question. I've been talking about what the Arboretum is, but I really haven't been saying, and I've mentioned demonstration garden, but for whom? The idea is that someone buying into the Wilani or Canopy area and buying a new house, they can come to Maclay Gardens and see the yew and magnolia and go, oh, I can plant those in my place. Um, how do we make that happen? Uh, Currently, I think we're really inwardly focused. We enjoy this for ourselves and for the plants, and we know it's right and it makes the world a better place. But how do we really engage more of the public? Um, do we get school kids out there? So we have a lot of work to do on the outward reach of the community. Part of that's been successful with the Friends of Maclay and the connections. I think Rayanne did a lot of that with the Friends of Maclay. So we've got a little bit, but there's a lot to do there.
I'm gonna grab the microphone in case anybody wants to give us a great idea.
And then I got to thank Marilena for the beauty of the slides. I gave her the information and she made it. So thank you, Marilena, for that. Yeah. Very, very talented person. And she did it like that. Just amazing.
I have a question for the audience. How many people have never been out into the native garden at Maclay, the native arboretum? All right, so we got a few. We got a few visitors. Most people have been out there, but
Good, good, good.
yeah.
And how many are going to be coming on the 22nd? All right, good. We'll broadcast that, recruit. Yes, yeah, we'll pigeonhole you. We'll track you down, get your input. Yes? Yes. If I can quickly go back to it. Yeah, currently this woodland area is, yeah. Okay, so this is the entrance, visitor center, and the brick path. You take a right down here, there's a little sign for the Arboretum there. This around the Shumard oak is what we've been managing for the 40 years. Oh, no, crap. Am I going the wrong way? So that's this area, Woodland Garden, Mariana, Caverns Garden, and Torreya.
What is there now that where you're extending?
Okay, where we're extending, you saw the picture of the sparkleberry patch. So that's an area we're extending into. And the sparkleberries and daffodils are right in here. And there's a mockernut hickory here and another hickory there. But this area, according to James, he thinks it was all Nandina. And they took out the Nandina years ago as an invasive And so now it's primarily just ground cover. And then the bulbs were there and they've just, give them 80 years and a little planting of bulbs is going to be an acre. And the mondo grass, the same thing. It's thick through the whole thing. There's a planting of rhododendron Chapmani right down here that Scott's been helping clear out around. It's a beautiful large patch. And we want to highlight that, open that up. And then along the lake, then we have another community type where we can plant some of the true wetland species in some of the gaps there. So those are the opportunities we have. Thank you. Yay!